Element 5, record and report the assessment decision. So 5.1 is to record the assessment outcomes promptly and accurately. So you need to check your own RTO's policy or any legislative requirements around turnaround time to assess the competence. At Evoke, it's all about reasonableness. If we have a learning group going through, we know the numbers, we can predict if people are finishing their assessments in a timely manner according to the time plan there of the training and assessment strategy. We have been able to make sure that we have the right labour. We've got the assessors in line, ready to start assessing and available. However, if there's an extension that's required, our assessors might be busy doing other training or attending other work, and therefore, that's just a time frame that would be negotiated with the candidate at the time. So that is just a verbal process. Some RTOs, however, may advertise that there is a 5 working day turnaround time, or a 21-day turnaround time or whatever it is. We aren't that static here at Evoke. So you would have to check with your RTO for any of their policies. 5.2 is to complete and process an assessment report according to the agreed assessment procedures. So for Susan, we would be using an RPL tool, and at the end of that RPL documentation, and there's one that you've downloaded for the fast tracking teachers, the draft of the Cheryl Hall RPL tool, and those last pages are where you're accurately reporting whether it's competent or not yet competent on an RPL tool. The other form is the assessment tool, and that would apply for John or any of our other case study activities. So there's your 2 forms of reporting. Certainly they're the templates that we use at Evoke, and your other RTOs that you might work for would have similar types of templates. 5.3 is to inform other relevant parties of the assessment decision according to confidentiality conventions. So this will vary. The confidentiality is according to the relevance of the other parties. So if you have a candidate who is paid privately for their tuition, then there's no need to be sharing that with the employer. The only parties that would be privy to that information would be the candidate themselves who've paid privately, the assessor, the RTO or members of the registered training organisation, and with the AVIT MIS reporting, the annual reporting, it really only requires your name, the courses and the outcome be provided to the registering body. So at the moment the registering body is ASQA, so they would have access to your information there. However, if your training has been funded by an employer or there's been some government funding, it's quite reasonable to expect that the person who's paying for the course would have access to your outcomes. So they would be provided with copies of the attendance sheets, perhaps for payment for you, or to check where you were when you should have been at work. They have access to your outcomes. Did you actually get issued with the qualification or the statement of attainment, or are you still working towards competency? Your participation, they could get access to information about the quality and level of participation, and access to training plans. So any training gaps that need to be addressed and further action plans for your competency, they would have access to that information. And for the purposes of determining their return on your investment, it's not just the money that they've paid for your training, it's also the downtime, the fact that you weren't at work and being productive in the workplace. There would be a dollar factor involved in that. So they need to be measuring that investing in training for you offers them a good return for their investment. Also, they have their own training records, so we would need to be sharing that information with them for that purpose.